Welcome to the Pre-K Scholars Kindergarten Readiness Kit Orientation. The purpose is to give you an idea of how this program works. After you've put the DVD in your computer, you will have an introduction, and then this home page will appear. We suggest that you start over here by the green box because it has background material that you will find helpful in orienting you to the course. There are documents such as the course philosophy, tips for parents, a detailed list of the course benefits, directions on how to use a number of the lessons, and exercises. There are some master supply lists, and there are optional activities as well. So these background materials are good for you to review, although you only need to do this once or twice. Then we suggest you jump right into the first lesson. We've numbered the lessons 1 through 22 because we do not introduce according to the alphabet, but rather according to the ease of sound acquisition, P being an easy letter and sound for youngsters to acquire. We also, dictating the order is the fact that we use letters to introduce concepts, and more difficult concepts are therefore moved to later in the course, and therefore those letters are moved later. One example would be here on lesson 8, we introduce numbers. In lesson 10, under A, we introduce adding. So A is going to have to follow N because the child has to know numbers, obviously, before they can begin to manipulate them, such as in adding. We're also avoiding this kind of rote acquisition of the alphabet, the kind of sing-songy A, B, C, D, E, F, G that kids learn, but they don't really know their letters when they're singing the song. We only have 22 lessons rather than 26 because we double up 4 times with similar sounding letters. Here, lesson 6, also lesson 11 with E, E, and G, lesson 13 with Y and U, and lesson 19 with Z and S. When we click on the first lesson,
Professor PK, who pronounces things perfectly.
We introduce the
Professor
visual of
PK,
the letter,
who pronounces
and also
things
we
perfectly.
demonstrate the sound and the motion. There is evidence to show that when children do both a movement and an imitation of the sound while they're looking at the letter, that they remember it better. In addition, there are children who are visual learners, there are children who are auditory learners, and children who are kinesthetic learners, and this methodology responds to all 3. So once we introduce with a human demonstrating it, we have the character do this again under the phonics card, and the child can replay this as often as necessary to hear the sound and imitate the motion. I'll demonstrate both a replay and then also move on to the phonics card where we'll introduce upper and lower case.
Professor PK, who pronounces things perfectly. This is a very colorful Professor PK, who pronounces things perfectly.
Here's the uppercase.
Professor PK, who
lowercase.
pronounces things perfectly.
After the child has practiced sounds and motions, learned the movement, learned the sound, seen the upper and lower case, there's a fun exercise putting into practice the letter they've just learned. They know the beginning sound, and they are to guess the object that begins with that sound.
This is a very colorful male bird, usually blue and green. Its long tail feathers spread out like a fan. Its tail feathers look like they have eyes on them.
I have to tell you that some adults miss this one. They think it's a parrot.
Peacock.
Just in case you might have missed it, I'll give you an easier one.
He sails on a ship. He steals from other ships at sea. He looks for treasure. Pirate.
Arr, matey.
Good, so there's 5 of these for every letter, a total of 130 in the entire course. Child can
It's
click on
shaped
them
like a farm animal.
and
You put money in it. Piggy bank.
and take a guess.
Professor PK, who pronounces things
Then
perfectly.
after the guessing game, we move on to printable activities. These are all designed to help reinforce the letter under study. These are printed. So you click on the print activities, and this will open at the beginning, where there's always an exercise that develops fine motor skills, which is to cut out the letter. We suggest in this case that the upper and lower case P be printed out on pink or purple paper to reinforce the P. The child cuts this out with scissors because there's data that shows that use of scissors in cutting out a letter helps them to remember, and it does develop fine motor skills. And then we have an additional activity such as pasting pieces of pink and purple paper onto the P that's just been cut out. There's always handwriting practice sheets, introduction as to how to make the upper and lower case, and practice sheets for both the uppercase and practice sheets for the lower case. We introduce patterns, or in this case we introduce a letter by P. We introduce a concept by P. In this case it's patterns. So we have sheets that the child can practice coloring in an ABB pattern, or they can lay down stickers in an ABB pattern, or you can use other objects from around the house, like maybe buttons placed in a pattern. Here's a different pattern, AAB, and here's yet another one, an ABC pattern. And as many of these as needed can be printed. You're not using a one-and-done book, but you actually have the ability to print as many worksheets as you need. There's always a fun activity for parents and child, or teacher and child, in this case, to make pink peppermint Play-Doh. It reinforces the letter. There's a recipe on how to do it, and there are suggestions on things that you could do to reinforce the letter P once you've made the Play-Doh. Finally, the last item is what we call homework or binder activities. 4- and 5-year-olds we find really delight, particularly if they have an older sibling, in having homework. In this case, they are charged with finding 7 items that begin with the letter P in either a catalog or a newspaper or magazine, and cut out the item, again a fine motor skill development exercise, and paste the object in the square. There's this sheet and another one to bring the total to 7, and then the parent initially will help them write the description. Early on in the course, it's the parents writing. Later in the course, as the child gets handwriting skills developed, the parent helps with spelling, but the child actually does the printing. When the homework activity is completed,
Professor
we are
PK, who
finished.
pronounces things perfectly.
And we have a celebration with a gold star by Professor PK, and then we move on through the dotted line and we meet the next character. In this case it's Harriet the hairdresser. So as I click here, you'll see that happening, the gold star, and then come down and meet Harriet the hairdresser.
Harriet the hairdresser doing a hairstyle. Harriet the hairdresser doing a hairstyle. Harriet the hairdresser doing a hairstyle.
The sound and motion again, and the letter. We introduce the phonics character. We have guessing game, 5 new clues with the letter H. We have a whole host of activities that are confined to the letter H, and then we have the homework, and finally we're finished, and we go on and meet Bob the baker.
Bob the baker baking bread. Bob the baker baking bread.
So we work our way around the town in each week, meeting
Walt,
a new
the
character.
window washer, washing the windows with water.
Doing fun activities that reinforce learning.
Walt the window washer.
I'll point out a couple of other things that it can be accomplished outside of the structure of the individual weekly lessons. The child could click over on the right side on phonics cards and practice letter sound recognition association just entirely on his or her own, starting in order or in random by clicking on
Addie
the letter.
the acrobat flies through the air. Ah, ah, ah.
Meeting the character.
Bob the baker baking bread.
And advancing
Ba, ba.
through the alphabet.
Harmon the cook cooking carrot soup. Dee Dee the diver dives deep down.
So you can see that the phonics letter sound can be drilled actually without an adult, as long as the child can work a cursor, and can be done outside of the structure of the individual lessons. The same is true for the guessing game. Again, the child can pick at random.
It's an organ in the body. It beats in your chest. It pumps your blood. It has just been born. It cries a lot. Infant.
So the child can practice the guessing game, and there's 130 choices here. Finally, I'd point out a couple of other additional assets of the program. Under reading list, we have put together a list of books that reinforce each letter. So here are children's books that reinforce the letter P. There's probably 40 or so books here. You could go to the library and pick 2 or 3 and read those books during P week. On to the second week, here are books that reinforce the letter H, and so forth. We have hundreds of books listed in this resource. I will also point out that we put all of the color worksheets in one file. So these all appear at the appropriate time during the course, but they're also put together here in one place for those people who don't have a color printer. They can print everything at one time and then introduce them as necessary. For example, here under Learning to Add, that's week 10 because that's letter A, and we introduce adding in week 10. As I scroll down here, you'll begin to see some of the fun activities that you can print over and over as part of this program. Here's a fun activity for B, which is to make Baker Bob's banana bread, and so forth. You get just an idea of some of the fun activities that are scattered throughout this program. It keeps children's interest up, and they really enjoy all of these functions, and it gives something that for parent and child to do that's educational as well as fun. And that's a pretty good outline of how the program works. There's additional details on the website, and we welcome your calls at the phone number listed if you have any additional questions. Thank you.